Okay, guys, so our learning target is the same learning target we had yesterday, which is I can identify how a character develops over the course of a story. So, yesterday we started reading a story called A Bad Word for Cats by Cynthia Rylant. Now, in this story, we followed the main character Magda as she looked for her cat Lewis. So, while she was looking for her cat, we were able to learn some things about her. Primarily, that she was a kind of harsh woman. So, she's not very kind, or at least not very kind to people. She definitely has a soft spot for animals, but just generally not a very nice woman. And she's very worried about her cat. So, today we are going to finish that story. And while you listen to me read, I want you to continue to mark the text to keep track of how Magda speaks, how Magda acts, and how other characters in the story react to her. Okay? So, just like we did yesterday, just keep track of those same things and just underline, circle, whatever you need to do in the text. Okay? So, I'm going to go ahead and start reading that for you. And in your reading, the very first page is kind of where we left off yesterday. So it's going to look like this. And we are over here on page 61, right where it says For Sale Cat. Okay. Magda caught her breath. She moved up to the window and this time looked squarely into the face of the girl. Are you selling a cat? She said quietly, but hard on the cat. Not me, this boy, the girl answered, brushing her stringy hair back from her face. Where is he? Magda asked. That yellow house right off the road up there. Magda headed across the lot. She had to knock only once. The door opened, and standing there was a boy about 15. I saw your sign, Magda said. I am interested in your cat. The boy did not answer. He looked at Magda's face with his wide blue eyes, and he grinned, showing a mouth of rotten and missing teeth. Magda felt a chill move over her. The cat, she repeated. You have one to sell? Is it orange and white? The boy stopped grinning. Without a word, he slammed the door in Magda's face. She was stunned. A strong woman like her to be so stunned by a boy? It shamed her. But again she knocked on the door, and very hard this time. No answer. What kind of boy is this? Magda asked herself. A strange one. And she feared he had Lewis. She had just raised her hand to knock a third time when the door opened. There the boy stood, with Lewis in his arms. Again Magda was stunned. Her cat was covered with oil and dirt. He was thin, and his head hung weakly. When he saw Magda, he seemed to use his last bit of strength to let go a pleading cry. The boy no longer was grinning. He held Lewis close against him, forcefully stroking the cat's ears again and again and again. The boy's eyes were full of tears. His mouth twisted into sad protest. Magda wanted to leap for Lewis, steal him, and run for home. But she knew better. This was an unusual boy. She must be careful. Magda put her hand into her pocket and pulled out a dollar bill. Enough? She asked, holding it up. The boy clutched the cat harder, his mouth puckering fiercely. Magda pulled out 2 more dollar bills. She held the money up, the question in her eyes. The boy relaxed his hold on Lewis. He tilted his head to one side as if considering Magda's offer. Then, in desperation, Magda pulled out a $20 bill. Enough? She almost screamed. The boy's head jerked upright. Then he grabbed all the bills with one hand and shoved Lewis at Magda with the other. Magda cradled Lewis in her arms, rubbing her cheek across his head. Before walking away, she looked once more at the boy. He stood stiffly with the money clenched in his hand, tears running from his eyes and dripping off his face like rainwater. Magda took Lewis home. She washed him and healed him, and for many days she was in a rage at the strange boy who had sold her own cat, nearly dead. When Louis was healthy, though, and his old fat self, playing games among the yarn beneath her loom, her rage grew smaller and smaller until finally she could forgive the strange boy. She came to feel sympathy for him, remembering his tears, and she wove some orange and white wool into a pattern, stuffed it with cotton, sewed two green button eyes and a small pink mouth onto it, then attached a matching stub of a tail. She put the gift in a paper bag, and on her way to the grocery one day, she dropped the bag in front of the boy's yellow house. And that is the end of our story. So, now what I want you to do is go back to what you marked in this portion of the text. And just like we did yesterday, I want you to go over the actions. So, what are some of the things Magda did? I want you to list some of the things Magda is feeling. You can list how she looks, how she's described. This hasn't really changed much. This is going to be fairly similar to what we had yesterday. You are going to make a list of her thoughts, some of the things she was thinking, and a list of some of the things she said and how she said them. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and pause your video and make that list really quickly. Okay, so I noticed that at the end of the story, so this, I have to fix this. This is Magda at the beginning. But at the end of the story, she went to the yellow house. She kept knocking on the door. She kept offering more money for Louis. She was cradling Louis. She nursed Louis to health. And then she sewed a stuffed version of Louis for the boy. So these are some of the actions she took at the end of the story. Now, her feelings at the end, she felt chilled. When she saw the boy, it said that she felt a chill wash over her. She was stunned. She was ashamed. Because I remember she was ashamed at the fact that the boy could make her feel stunned. She was afraid. She was desperate. She felt rage. And then finally, she felt forgiveness and sympathy. Now, like I said, her looks didn't really change. The only big difference here was that she wasn't glaring at the end of the story. They never once mentioned her glaring again, while that was a pretty frequent descriptor for her in the beginning. So some of her thoughts, I remember she thought, what kind of boy is this? She thought that the boy was unusual. She thought that she needed to be careful. And then towards the end, she was remembering the boy's tears. And as for words, she quietly asked, "Are you selling a cat?" And this was very different because in the beginning, her words were very harsh, very to the point, very almost accusatory. And at this point, she was quietly asking, "Are you selling a cat?" And then when she was trying to give the boy money for Louis, she screamed or almost screamed the word enough, trying to get him to respond to her in some way. So this is how I would describe Magda at the end of the story. Now, what I want you to do is going to be fairly similar to what you did during library yesterday with our other book. So this is a very similar map, and you are going to describe Magda at the beginning and then describe her again at the end. So this would go hand in hand with yesterday I asked you to describe Magda in one word, and now you're going to do pretty much the same thing. You're going to do something very similar. So describe her at the beginning, describe her at the end, and then I want you to tell me how she changed. What was happening that showed her changing? What did she do that showed this change. So what was causing this? And then I want you to try to explain to me why she changed. Okay? So we might have different answers, especially for the why, and maybe for the how. So, like I said, I want you to be giving me some of the things that happened that showed this change. Now, for the beginning, we are all going to go with the thought of her being mean or harsh, because those were the descriptors that we got most frequently for Magda. When I was asking all of my classes, people were primarily saying she was mean or she was harsh. Okay? So then I want you to think about how she was at the end and what was happening to make her change, how she changed, what was showing that change. Okay? When you finish with that, you are going to come back over to this slide over here. And I want you to tell me, what were your observations about Magda at the end of the story? And how do you think she has changed? I want you to explain that to me. Tell me your observations about Magda at the end of the story and how you think she has changed. Because she's definitely not acting the same way she was at the beginning. So I want you to talk to me about that. When you finish, you are going to fill in the how and why characters change graphic organizer for your book club book. So that is this right here. So you're going to fill in the same graphic organizer about the main character in your book club book. So if you're reading Cam Jansen, it'll be about Cam Jansen. If you are reading Esperanza Rising, it's going to be about Esperanza. Okay? So I want you to fill in that graphic organizer for your book club book. Then you are going to read silently for 10 minutes. Again, this is happening before you move on to IXL. Read silently for 10 minutes. And then you're going to go on to IXL, and I want you to bring skills U.1, U.2, U.3, and V.4 to 90%. After that, if you've been working hard, you can have free time. All right, go ahead and get to work.